4:22 a.m. I really wanted to wear this shirt, but I didn't want to put on proper pants, so this isn't exactly the ideal look, but it is what I'm going to be wearing today. Welcome back to my series of vlogs that are specific to the well-being of this channel and of myself. It's called What is the Show? And it's also where I draw the camera so that I'll remember to look up. I'm not good at using the camera, so if part of my head is cut off right now, I'm sorry, and I love you, and we're gonna just get through this in one absolutely stellar take. So I'm gonna go ahead and date the page. You know, obviously you gotta buy it dinner first. And we're gonna be drawing the camera, but hopefully in better detail this time. Today I really wanted to talk about my old webcomic called Molasses. A project that I haven't worked on in 1 billion years. It's near and dear to my heart, and I miss it dearly. I miss doing it. But you can't have everything. Sometimes it's just not time to work on Molasses. And I've accepted that. But oftentimes I think to myself, well, you see, you can't abandon Molasses forever. Now, the reason I can't abandon Molasses forever is because I made 11.5 volumes of that series. Each of them were around 100 pages, maybe just under 100 pages. They were very sloppy, you know, which is pretty much on brand for most of the things I do. They were done in composition notebooks. I'd love to do a version of Molasses that just isn't in composition notebooks, something a little better. But the problem with Molasses is the same problem with all my work, which is that I'm terrible at editing, which is why you'll see that this video is going to be in one take. You know, aside from my previously mentioned technology issues which are preventing me from being able to upload edited videos, and I'm just having to upload them raw. Beyond that, I mean, I really am just bad at editing. That's why my channel is the way it is. It's one of my biggest problems of my life. And Molasses was no different. It was a comic that I made in a very manic state, usually. And I would, you know, knock out the books as fast as possible. And sometimes they were some of the most incoherent things that I could possibly write, and sometimes they were more coherent than my usual stuff. So sometimes they were more coherent than the stuff I make now. I'm thinking about it a lot lately because of the quarantine. And the reason the quarantine reminds me of Molasses is because the 6th and 7th or so, maybe 7th and 8th, some of the volumes in the middle were about the characters suddenly, out of nowhere, just being like trapped on boats in the middle of the ocean. They just got everybody in the entire population of the earth was sucked out of their lives, and just for no reason just ended up just in this weird purgatorial dimension of just being on boats with force fields around them and floating in water with no land in sight. And anyone who was standing physically near each other was trapped on the boats, and anyone who was alone was alone. And it was just sudden and unexpected isolation, and the characters didn't know what to do with it, and it just reminds me of where I'm at lately, and where the whole world is at right now. And I kind of have a craving to be working on that story, because it would soothe my soul in these times where I'm basically just on the boats. It's basically just the boats. And that's very troubling to me, but, you know, that doesn't necessarily have to be the end-all be-all of the situation. Obviously, we won't be on these boats forever, and you know, in the meantime, it really does give me a craving to work on Molasses again. That comic is still visible somewhere, a bit harder to find now, since it's been several years since I last updated, and I definitely only posted the first 3 chapters online, and the first 3 volumes of it, and the rest of it, I just have in notebooks in my apartment, just scattered around. Some of those notebooks have a current different function of being part of the stage that my talk show is filmed on, which I will continue to make. I just need to, I just got burned out on it, and I needed to focus on other stuff. So that talk show will come back for a second season whenever I'm ready for that. But that, I don't know, that show had like a wild energy anyway, so it needs a break. It needs to take a second and take a breath. And Molasses kind of had a similar sloppy energy, and I really want a less sloppy version of Molasses. I want a version that's more coherent, but at the same time, I want to be true to the original idea of the story, which was kind of the same philosophy as this channel, which is to not get too caught up in perfection or, you know, improvement at the you know, expense of your mental health and your social connections and your ability to be genuine with yourself and others. You know, a lot of my anxiety about growing this channel and about getting better at it and about the idea of potentially eventually succeeding at what I'm doing, what's scary is that parasocial relationships are some of the most terrifying nightmare things in the world. The minute somebody gets good at YouTube, it's like everything gets way more scary in their lives, and again I see videos of like people talking about, oh, why they burned out on YouTube, and it was because, you know, the parasocial aspect got like out of control. You know, all of a sudden there were way more expectations for quality and professionalism, even if their channel wasn't in a professional state when they got famous. That doesn't happen to everyone. Some people have a great time and are relaxed about it, but it's kind of hard to maintain that mindset from what I've heard, and I'm really scared for that to happen to me if I do ever get good at my craft. Right now, part of the reason my channel is so sloppy is because I'm scared to find out what happens if I improve. And Molasses was about that too, and I honestly, I wish Molasses was an animated series. That series means a lot to me, and it did a lot for my mental health, and I miss working on it, but it's just so hard to figure out how to make a version of it that's better than it used to be, because honestly it was subpar in the past, and it wasn't living up to what it could be. And I'll before I die, whenever that is, I want to have made the best possible version of Molasses that I possibly can. I think its official full name is Molasses the Condiment, because technically there was another webcomic that had the name Molasses, and I just had to let that go. But it's Molasses colon the Condiment, so it's still called Molasses, you know. And if it was an animated series, I think that would be even less of an issue, but I'd probably still play it on the safe side. You know, to avoid any kind of conflict down the road. But Molasses the Condiment is something I would love to animate and put on this channel eventually as an animated series. I'd love to produce it entirely myself, because I think that a sloppy animation is a bit more forgivable than a sloppy webcomic, because especially when you also provide your own sloppy music, and especially when you provide your own sloppy voice acting and your own sloppy editing and your own sloppy self-promotion, I think there's a certain charm to that when it comes to the production of an entire animated series. I know it's doable, theoretically. I just need to be brave enough to withstand the anxiety of sucking that much at it at the beginning. If I could have my druthers, I'd rather it just be, you know, my first animated series, but I don't know if that's feasible, because a lot about Molasses needs to change. In the past, there were some scenes that really just don't represent me or my beliefs anymore. There were some characters that I'd really like to cut out. There are a lot of darlings that I need to kill. There were a lot of world-building aspects that just got way too specific that I would need to just cut out entirely. There's a lot of characters that need to be rewritten. There's a lot of scenes that need to go a different way, and that's intimidating. But the older I get, and the more time I have that's passed since I last worked on Molasses, the more I start to understand what was good about the series and what was bad about it, and what just needed a little extra work. So maybe someday down the line, Molasses will be revisited as just a better thing, and maybe someday it can exist on this channel when I'm more confident in my voice acting, and when I'm more confident in my ability to animate, or not. Maybe someday soon I'll just say fuck it and create an animated series the same way that back in 2011 I just said fuck it and created a series of graphic novels that were really, really, really sloppy and lazy, but also some of the best shit I ever made. And if you knew me back in anywhere between 2011 and 2000 and whatever, 2013 or so, then you probably knew about Molasses. Maybe 2015 was the last time Molasses was ever relevant in my social circle, and I only have, you know, a small amount of followers on this channel right now, and some of them are my friends and loved ones, you know, family. So some of the people who might come across this video probably remember Molasses, and people have told me in the past that they'd love to see me finish it, because a few people, a small handful of people did read it, and they did like it, and I miss it, and I like it, you know. So someday I'll maybe work on Molasses again, you know. I miss Molasses. For what it was worth, it was a good series. It just also kind of sucked a little, and I'd love to make a version that doesn't suck, I guess. I'd love to make a version of Molasses that is a lot more accessible, a lot more, a lot less bad, just a lot less sloppy, a lot more interesting and engaging. Something where I fully understand the characters that I'm making and why I'm making them. Something where I respect what I'm making a lot more, because a lot of the time I would just throw stuff out for the sake of throwing it out, and it would affect the canon, and I wouldn't change it, I wouldn't rewrite it, you know. And I would love to do a version where I just put a lot more thought into what I'm making, and really just kind of make the old me proud. Because if there's one thing that me in the past would have wanted most of all, it was for me to finish that series and truly make something good out of it. I miss whatever it was, and I miss knowing that I had an actual thing that at the time I was a lot more proud of. Because back then, you know, for my age, Molasses was a lot more impressive. And now, it's a lot less impressive, but a lot of the subject matter did end up becoming strangely relevant to my life. You know, a lot of the characters, I was writing characters who were supposed to be in their mid-20s, and right now I'm in my, you know, mid-late 20s, I'm 27, and the characters are a lot like who I turned out to be, and I was writing them when I was 19 years old. And so I'm really relieved to find that they were accurate, but I'm also unnerved to find that they were accurate, because I kind of didn't really want it to be this way. I wanted it to be better, and it's kind of not. And Molasses is a depiction of the world turning out in ways that I really didn't want it to. And in order to cope with that, I need to finish Molasses. So, time's up. I drew the camera again, and I drew the 3 main characters of Molasses. I hope this is in frame, but this is April, this is Gerald, and this is Otto. And I'd love to animate these folks. But yeah, just in case that's not, I don't know, I'll make the thumbnail a better version of them or something. Whatever.